this is a little less about the details of the code and more about the general practices, the working principles that the JEDI project follows. And the focus of today is how you can contribute. So we want, the JEDI project is a collaborative, community-driven effort, and we welcome contributions from the community. That's the sign of a vibrant project and a useful project that's being valued and used by the community. So this is really, the whole day is about how you can contribute. And this, we're on the schedule for 2 lectures that, as with Benjamin's talks yesterday morning, that it's combined into one slide deck. So it's really all big one lecture, but we can stop about midway through and take a break for questions. So let me, oops. So I wanted to start out, we mentioned this briefly, I think, a couple times this week, but I wanted to emphasize and encourage you to use these forums. These are user forums. It's at forums.jcsda.org. This is a website that anybody can access. It's public access. You can join. It's hosted by Discord, but you can go in here. There's a JEDI category, there's a CRTM category, and then when you go into the JEDI category, you can see these lists of topics about questions, and you can expect to have answers. So the JEDI team, many of whom you've met this week, they will monitor this site, as well as the broader community of JEDI users and developers. So you might get, if you have a question about something not working, or you can post a question here and you may get an answer from a core member of the JEDI team or another user who may have run into the same issue. So we encourage you to use these forums. And you can't get through this week without seeing a picture of Yoda. So I did check, and it's the copyright is okay here as long as it's non-commercial use. But yeah, so the outline of today's, it's really, as I said, 2 talks, is talking about our general practices, the way of a JEDI, agile project management, the focus on collaborative approach, and then this whole thing about how we manage the code through Git and GitHub. And we haven't mentioned Git Flow much this week, but we will today. And that's an important component of how we work at JCSDA and JEDI. And then we can talk about how you can contribute code if you have some kind of code that you want to contribute to the JEDI project and get it into the JEDI code base. As I said, we encourage that. If you're working publicly, if you don't have access to our internal repositories, then we encourage you to work from a fork, and I'll talk about how to do that. And the practical today shows you how to do that as well. And a key feature here is that whenever you contribute code to JCSDA, we want to see only the changes that you have made. So as I'll talk about in the Git Flow paradigm, the latest working branch of the code is called develop of each of the repositories. So Oops, Saber, Yoda, UFO, each of them has a develop branch, and that's where the latest code goes. And that's where you would contribute code if you were going to do so. But you want to make sure that your branch is up to date with develop. So you need to regularly develop changes rapidly on a day-to-day basis. So you have to, if you're going to contribute code, you need to regularly merge the latest develop into your code to make sure it's up to date. And then make sure your code is adequately tested and documented. And so we'll talk about in this morning how to do that. And then the logistics of how to actually contribute code. And on GitHub, these are called pull requests. It's a little bit of a unusual wording of what exactly a pull request is. But those who are familiar with GitHub, it's a familiar term, but for those who are not, it can be an unusual term, and we'll talk a little bit about that. And then the dynamics of code reviews, what happens when every code that goes into JEDI is reviewed by at least 2 people. And so we'll talk about how that process works. So the way of a JEDI is collaborative. So JCSDA is a joint center. We have partners, collaborators, stakeholders, and a broader community that we serve. And the JEDI project itself is a joint effort. So it's really, as you've seen all week, it's not a small core team that's doing everything. We have really hundreds of people who have contributed in some way. It's well over 100 now in terms of the past year who have contributed code to JEDI. So it is, and it's a distributed team. Some of these are in Boulder, Colorado, others are in Maryland, others are in the UK, others others are in California. So it is a distributed team of talented software developers and scientists, and with varying objectives and time commitments. So everybody has their own deliverables that they want and goals that they want to accomplish with JEDI and their own uses of JEDI. So it's a flexible, diverse environment, and to approach that type of environment, we use modern software development practices, and that usually means agile software development or project management. And there's different definitions and different models of what agile software development, or agile, more generally, agile project management is. But some common features in all these agile type approaches are that they are innovative, that they break new ground. They're flexible, that there's this term future-proof. Nothing is truly future-proof, but we want to design JEDI. It's a principle, a design principle behind JEDI to be able to deal with anything that comes down the pipe in 5 or 10 years. We don't know what new instruments are going to be available in 5 or 10 years. We don't know what new models are going to be available in 5 or 10 years. So we want to design JEDI to be flexible enough and extensible enough to be able to incorporate any new developments and advances that come along. And responsiveness to users and developers. So Agile is usually contrasted with what's called the waterfall approach to project management. And that waterfall approach is basically setting down a list of requirements. So stakeholders, so the team works with stakeholders to have this list of requirements, and then the team comes back a year or two later and says, here's your product. But that's not how Agile approaches work. So there should be a continuous dialogue between the users and developers, and when things need to be changed, they are changed. So there's this communication and this responsiveness, and that's where the word Agile comes from. That if requirements can change, we still have requirements, but they can change, and they can be different for different partners. So we want to be able to respond to that. And continuous delivery of functional software. That's kind of the bottom line, and that's a little elaborated a bit on this slide. So these are, again, there are different Agile approaches. The most famous one is called Scrum, which outlines in a little more detail what exactly a project management strategy is. But in general, so loosely, there are 12 basic principles, according to some, on what an Agile approach is. And so I won't go through all of these, but I'll highlight some of them. There's early and continuous delivery of valuable software, deliver working software frequently, and working software is the primary measure of progress. So you sense a theme here. So the theme is that you don't go off for 6 months or a year and work on something and then deliver it at the end of the year. It's a continuous, you deliver what you have. You progressively improve the functionality, and you frequently update the code and release the code so that people can use it. They don't have to wait to use it. So even if it can't do everything on day one, it can still do some things. So we want people to use it when it can do some things. So there's no requirement that it has to be complete before we release it. So that's one of the core principles. There's also this other thing I mentioned, welcoming changing requirements even late in development. So requirements change and we have to adapt. Teams regularly reflect and adjust behavior, and business people and developers working together daily. So here, this is a more general software development type approach, but you can replace business people here with stakeholders. That means users, that means operational centers and academic institutions. Whoever's using JEDI, we want to have a continuous dialogue. What do you need? What do you want us to do? And what deliverables do we need to get to you in order for this to be useful to you? And that type of approach has this. There's this KIS, keep it simple, stupid. I guess I can say that. So this is this approach of this constant dialogue between the users and developers helps to minimize or maximize the amount of work not done. So we don't want to be developing things that nobody's going to use. So that's a key principle of agile software development, is you have talented team members who are eager to do something that's useful. And so we need input from the community, and we need you to tell us what's useful. So in terms of agile tools, we've already used Git and we've used Git this week. In terms of GitHub, our only experience with GitHub this week was cloning repositories, but we'll work more with GitHub this afternoon in the practical, or I guess it's this morning in the practical. But this is really useful and core to the JEDI development. This is the version control and the release distribution. So this is how we manage the code. And any changes in the code are done through pull requests, which I'll talk about. And all, as I said, and I'll say again, all the code that goes into JEDI is reviewed. Nothing goes in unless somebody else looks at it and comments on it. And Git and GitHub help to coordinate a distributed community of developers. As I said, we have developers all over the U.S. and Europe, and maybe beyond. So everybody's in different time zones, different locations. But if you can see the code on GitHub and do a clone and do a pull to update your code, then you don't have to be in the same room. It can help to be in the same room sometimes for code sprints to get something specific done, but this GitHub platform really helps coordinate this distributed community, and you don't have to be in the same time zone. Even if somebody's working while you're sleeping, they can still see the changes in the code that you made, or if you made a pull request the previous day, somebody can review it while you're sleeping. So it's a very efficient system. And I'll talk about this thing called Git Flow, which is a way to encourage both innovation and continuous delivery. And then, so for all those 12 principles, for many of those 12 principles on the previous slide, Git and GitHub really help with achieving these 12 things. But for those that GitHub can't do, we have something else called ZenHub. Excuse me. So many of you won't even see that this is kind of behind the scenes, but this is Agile project management software that's closely integrated with GitHub. So it has project boards, Agile project boards like Scrum or Kanban, and this is how we handle things behind the scenes with issue tracking, enhanced code reviews, commentaries on ZenHub. We also have GitHub teams to communicate asynchronously between different developers. And for those of you who don't have access to our internal ZenHub boards, there are the forums. So these are publicly accessible, as I said. And this is where we get, this is our primary means of user support. So please do use them and ask questions, and please give us feedback. Like I said, feedback is a key component of this agile approach. Let's see, I'll wait a minute to show the Git Flow stuff. So this as you've seen this week, you've probably already visited our website. So if you go to github.com/jcsda, you see our public repositories. This is OOPS. This is what it looks like on GitHub. It's a website, so you go there with a web browser, and you see this is it's on the master branch by default, and then you see the different directory structure within OOPS here. You see here releases. The latest release is 1.1.0, which was just released, what was it, June? I made this slide yesterday, I think. So yeah, about 2 weeks ago is when our latest release came out. So just a little terminology here. Git is the command line tool. So this is the version control system that you use on the command line. But GitHub is the web-based repository management. So you can use Git with different web-based repositories such as Bitbucket or GitLab, but we use GitHub. So that's a distinction between what Git is and what GitHub is. So GitHub is basically the website, and this is a software as a service for repository management in the cloud. So this handles the different branches and releases and the pull requests, and any changes are done through pull requests. So, and I'll get back to what that term means. So what is Git Flow? So Git Flow is several different things. The main thing is it's really a philosophy. It's an optimal project or software development strategy to, as I said, encourage both innovation and continuous delivery of functional software. But it's also a working principle. So, for example, if you don't follow the Git Flow naming conventions and you commit to JEDI, then you will be, we can't prevent a pull request, but you will be, there's a webhook that will automatically scold you if your branch naming convention doesn't follow the Git Flow paradigm. But, and it is also an application. So it's an extension to Git. It's already installed in the Singularity container. You don't have to use the application. The most important part is these first two bullets, just the philosophy behind Git Flow. And it goes back to this blog post by the software developer Vincent Dyson from 2010. Here is it's a really good read, really well-written short article, and highly recommended that you take a look at this. There's a link to it in the Academy pages. But this is where I wanted to show, I want to leave the slides and actually go through this PDF, which also is available on the Academy web pages. Let me make it a little bigger. So the idea is that there are two permanent branches in any repository. They're called develop and master. In some repositories now, this is being changed to main, but most of the JEDI repositories, it's still called master. So you can think of master and main being interchangeable. But so in addition to develop and master, most of the actual work, so the idea behind the develop branch is that this is not really code in progress. Everything on the development branch should pass all tests. So this should, despite the name develop, This is mature code that passes all tests and should be documented. So that's what's in the develop branch. Most of the actual work occurs in these what are called feature branches. So this is time is the vertical axis here, and the time increases downward. So the idea is that if you are going to contribute something to JEDI, you would, from the develop branch, you would create a feature branch. And this shows two examples of feature branches. So from the development, you would branch off, you would make your changes in the feature branch, and then when you're ready to merge it back into develop, this step here, this is done with a pull request. When your feature branch is ready to merge back into develop, then this can only be done with code reviews and a pull request and continuous integration testing. So it has to pass all tests. And so then the develop branch keeps going, and then other feature branches can be created off it and merged back into the feature branch. So that's where mainly most developers will be working, just creating feature branches and merging them back into develop. There's other types of I guess it doesn't show a bug fix branch here. So a bug fix branch is another type of branch. So a bug fix branch, similarly to the feature branches, if you see a bug, these are usually quick fixes. So if you see a bug or something, a bug fix branch will, similar to a feature branch, it'll branch off develop and then merge back into develop, and it also has a pull request. This is distinct from a hotfix branch, which is branches off of master. So every commit to the master branch is associated with a tag and a public release. So the master branch is mainly for public releases. If there's something in the public release that we see there's a bug in our public released tagged code, then a hotfix will we can start a hotfix branch and then fix the bug and merge it back into master. But that fix should also go back into develop and anything that we've fixed. So a hotfix branch should merge back into both master and develop. So the distinction again between a hotfix branch and a bug fix is that the hot fixes come off of master and go back into master, whereas a bug fix just comes in and out of develop. There's another type of branch called a release branch. Most developers don't have to worry about that. That's mainly for us, the core team. But the idea here is that when we're about ready for a release, we branch off the develop branch, we create a release branch. And then the main thing here is to fix bugs and add documentation and to test it. And when we're sure that everything is working, then from the release branch, it goes into develop and gets a tag. And it also gets any of this documentation or bug fixes also goes into develop, so that it's in the latest code. So that's how the Git Flow paradigm encourages both continuous delivery of functional software while at the same time these feature branches are going on. So it simultaneously encourages innovation. So the process of putting out a release does not interfere with any of this feature branch development. So that is the idea here behind Git Flow. So the life cycle of a feature branch, and this is with the Git Flow software. You don't have to use the Git Flow software, but it just makes this slide a little shorter. You can do the same commands with Git commands. But the idea is, so if you were going to start a feature branch, you would first enable Git Flow for the repository, Git Flow init. Sometimes this -d works, so sometimes you can leave it. That's the default settings, but it'll ask you what you want to use for the master branch and develop branch and things. So there's further information on that in the documentation. But and again, this is only if you're using the Git Flow software, which is not required. But the main point is, so you start the feature branch. So you start a new branch called feature new stuff. You push it to GitHub for the first time. There's this Git Flow feature publish function that will do that for you. It combines several Git commands into one, and then you work on your code locally on your machine. Additional commits and pushes as needed. A Git push transfers your local code up to GitHub, and regularly, as I said, bring it up to date with develop. So you check out develop, you pull the latest develop branch, then you check out your feature branch, and you merge develop in so that your branch is up to date. And then when there is a Git Flow feature finish, but you don't have to use it. We don't want you to use it, because when the feature branch is finished, we'll do a pull request on GitHub in order to merge that into develop so it can be reviewed. And the permissions are not set up. If you were to use Git Flow feature finish, that would merge the stuff back in develop. But if you were tried to push that back to GitHub, then it wouldn't be accepted, because the develop is a protected branch. And then when successfully merged, the remote branch on GitHub will be deleted, and then you can delete your local branch. So this updates your local GitHub to delete, and then you do a command to delete your local branch. So again, if you can't install Git Flow or don't want to use it, that's okay. But just be sure to use the proper naming conventions and branching conventions. So if you develop a new feature, your branch should be called, should start with one of these things. It should be a feature branch, a release branch, a bug fix branch, or a hotfix branch. And if it does not follow one of these names, then you'll get a nasty email automated from our JEDI repositories telling you to please rename your branch. So takeaways from that Git Flow manifesto, that blog post: master is for releases only. Most developers never have to deal with it. Develop is not ready for public consumption, not ready for releases, but it does compile and it passes all tests. So if you have any code that you're still working on, it should not go into develop until it's ready. Feature branches is where most of the development happens. They branch off develop and merge back into develop. Similar to a bug fix branch, branches off develop, merges back into develop. A hot fix will branch off of master and merge back into master and develop. So this is for released code. And then release branches are mainly for the JEDI core team. So, and again, this is important, as it has been mentioned a couple times this week. Mariam mentioned it yesterday, that feature branches should not last for months. They should be, they shouldn't change like 100 files. If they sometimes it's necessary, but that's should be the exception rather than the rule, because a large pull request if you have many code changes, it's hard to review. It's hard for reviewers to figure out what you've done. So they should, and it might take a long time for a code review, for people to have the time to really understand what you've done. So it's in your best interest, and it's in the best interest of the project to keep them short, to break up big changes into small pieces, and then just do one step at a time. When you have something working, go ahead and issue a pull request so people can look at it.